Sagittarius, have you been feeling like time is moving faster than usual? Strange dreams, anxious feelings with no clear reason. Doors you once thought were safe, suddenly closing without warning. This is not random. A death is approaching, and no one, not even you, can stop it. But remember, this death is not the end. It's a calling from the universe, summoning your soul into a brand new chapter. The question is, are you ready to lose everything that no longer belongs to you? If a part of you is shivering right now, if your heart is beating faster just hearing these words, then this is no coincidence. It's your soul recognizing a signal. And before this death arrives, you need to hear the message the universe whispered into your birth chart long ago. Stay with me until the end, because every detail in this reading might be the clue that helps you survive the spiritual cleansing that lies ahead. Now, let us begin decoding this death through the 5 dimensions Sagittarius is about to confront. You've felt this for a while now, haven't you? Not with your eyes, not with your logic, but in the silences no one sees. In those moments you sit alone in the dark, searching for no one but a reason to keep going. Something inside you is cracking. Slightly, softly, like the very first fracture on a centuries-old sheet of ice. But it's these subtle breaks that mark the beginning of a massive collapse. Here's the truth no one wants to face. To be reborn, you must allow a part of you to die. Sagittarius is a fire sign, symbol of the journey, the ideals, the eternal flame of the soul. But perhaps you've been burning too long for things that no longer belong to you. And now that fire isn't scorching your enemies, it's burning down the outdated version of who you once were. Your ruling planet, Jupiter, is the embodiment of expansion, of belief in something greater. But right now, Jupiter is asking you to turn inward, not to expand outward, but to expand your soul. To question a belief system that has long decayed, to revisit a life philosophy that no longer fits your truth. You may not say it aloud, but you're tired, aren't you? Tired of trying to become someone. Tired of holding on to a cheerful, strong, positive image, when inside, your spirit feels like cracked earth begging for rain. And so your soul begins to speak. Not in words, but through sudden headaches, odd dreams, moments when you wake up in the middle of the night feeling like you're falling endlessly into something nameless. You're not losing your mind, you're awakening. I used to think rebirth was something glorious, a burst of light that pulled me out of the darkness. But I was wrong. Rebirth is simply waking up one morning and realizing you no longer want to fight. Not because you've given up, but because you finally understand. I don't need to keep holding on to what has already expired in my life. Sometimes, the bravest thing a soul can do is accept that not everything withers needs to be saved. Some things are meant to die. The universe never calls you unless your soul is ready. And now you're standing at the threshold, where you can't go back, and yet you have no clear vision of what lies ahead. Don't panic. Don't be afraid. You are not alone. Your spirit guides are walking with you, in the form of instincts, uncanny coincidences, words from strangers that make you cry without knowing why. They're waiting for you to release. Release the old identity. Release the outdated definitions of who you thought you had to be. Release the mask that says, "I'm fine," so you can finally live as the version of yourself that's ready to awaken. In tarot, the death card is the most misunderstood, and yet one of the most beautiful. Not the death of the body, but the death of illusion. Sagittarius, you are walking through this card right now. A part of you, the part that's been clinging to control, running from emotion, trying to be strong at all costs, has reached its end. And the strange part is, you don't even have to kill it. You just have to stand still and let it dissolve on its own. You don't have to know what's coming. You just have to know this. You will no longer be the same person you were yesterday. And that is something beautiful. Peace doesn't come from holding on, it comes from letting go, and knowing you've lost nothing real at all. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath and whisper, "I allow the old part of me to die. I allow my true self to step into the light. I do not fear this sacred death because I know I am being reborn." If these words are bringing tears to your eyes, if it feels like someone just wrote down the voice you've been carrying in silence, then maybe, just maybe, your soul has been waiting for this message for a very long time. If you're ready to let go, ready to be free, say it with a symbol in the comments. And if you know someone standing on the edge between ending and beginning, share this reading with them. If your heart is quietly nodding in agreement, if these words are echoing something deep within you, then write this in the comments. I, Sagittarius, choose to trust in divine protection. And if you truly believe in that protection, hit like as your way of sending a signal to the universe that you are ready to release the old. And finally, live as your truest self. This message was made for Sagittarius, in this very specific astrological moment, a time when spiritual death is opening the most powerful portal of rebirth in the entire year. When a part of you begins to fall apart, the connections around you begin to tremble, because your soul is shifting its frequency, and not everyone is able to walk with you at this new vibration. Sometimes letting go doesn't come from willpower. It comes from truth, finally revealing itself in silence. The people you once loved, the ones you once trusted, they may begin to drift away. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your path is now moving in a different direction. So now, let's go deeper, into the part of your heart that's quietly aching, into the space where old relationships are cracking, making room for a new kind of love. Have you ever felt this? When someone you once shared everything with suddenly becomes a stranger, inside your own home, when even a simple conversation feels like a burden, when you sit next to someone and still feel lonelier than when you're alone. Some separations don't come through arguments, they come through silence that's lasted too long. Dear Sagittarius, Jupiter, your ruling planet, is always expanding your heart, your faith, your experience. But maybe you've been trying to hold on to a relationship that no longer fits the person you're becoming. Maybe it's a spouse who once held your hand through storms, but now all that's left is duty. Maybe it's a love you've kept alive for 10 long years, even though both of you are living in completely different emotional worlds. Maybe it's a soul friend who used to read your every glance, but now there's no longer enough room in each other's schedules to hold space for that connection. The truth is, we change, and not everyone changes with us. Many people have written to me sharing this, that they feel left behind, that once their children grew up, once their partners grew distant, they didn't know where they belonged anymore. They used to be the ones who did everything, the problem solvers, the strong ones. And then one day, they sat down and realized they had forgotten how to feel their own feelings. If you're feeling that too, take a gentle breath. Because this is not the end. It's a sacred moment of emotional awakening. You are not being abandoned. You are being called back to your truest self. Some relationships reach a point where they make you feel like you have to hold yourself together just to survive. You stop crying, stop speaking your truth, stop breathing too deeply, because you're afraid something will break. But Sagittarius, is it still love if you have to suppress who you really are every single day? We don't have to stay in a connection just to avoid feeling guilty. True love doesn't imprison you with responsibility. It lifts you with freedom. This is the season when Jupiter is moving through deeper waters, influenced by Scorpio's call for emotional rebirth. You are being invited to release outdated forms of love and step into a kind of soul connection that starts from within. Not everyone will walk with you on this next stretch of the journey, and that's okay. I once witnessed a woman walk away from a 28-year marriage, not out of hatred, not because of harm, but because she knew she had lived long enough for everyone else, and now it was time to live for herself. Her story is a reminder of this truth. Letting go is not a rejection of love. It's honoring the natural ending of an emotional journey. And if you're standing at that very threshold, know this: you are not alone. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, I allow myself to leave behind what no longer nourishes my soul. I choose to love, gently, honestly, and deeply. If these words made you pause, if they brought a tear, or simply softened something in you, then you've already begun to touch the door of true healing. Write in the comments, I, Sagittarius, choose to love with truth and to release what has expired. And if your heart agrees, hit like as an act of self-love, as a quiet signal to the universe. I am ready to be loved in a healthier way. Have you ever looked at your desk? The same desk you've sat at for years, and suddenly it all feels fine. The screen is still there. The endless numbers, the voice of the coworker nearby. Everything's the same. But you're not who you were on your first day anymore. You've grown, not in age, but in depth. Have you ever felt like you're being held in place by a stable job, a steady income, a workplace everyone says is good, but your heart feels more dried out with each passing day? Sagittarius, you weren't born to live inside a mold. You are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, of meaning, of the soul's vast calling. But life doesn't always give you easy choices. There's rent to pay, family to support, eyes watching, expectations pressing. So you stay, and slowly you trade your soul's quiet sighs for a monthly paycheck. I once spoke with someone who held a senior role at a major corporation, successful, sharp, wealthy, and she said to me, "Every time I drive to work, it feels like I'm attending my own funeral." No one noticed her collapse, because sometimes collapse doesn't come with noise, no warning, no announcement. Just one morning, you wake up and realize you no longer want to try. Not because you're lazy, not because you're ungrateful, but because your heart is no longer there. Your soul has already moved, but your body is still trapped in place. When Jupiter, Sagittarius's ruler, enters the heavy zones of Scorpio or Capricorn, you are asked to face one hard truth. You might be brilliant, but you may no longer belong there. Those disruptions at work, conflicts with your boss, creative block, financial pressure, they are not bad luck. They're the universe tearing down a career structure that has reached its expiration date. Ask yourself, am I still living in alignment with who I truly am through this job? If money were no object, what would I do each day? Have I abandoned a gift or passion simply because I thought, I'm not good enough? Pause for a few minutes, write it down, or comment below. Tell me what you're wrestling with, because maybe, just maybe, someone else is going through the same thing and waiting for you to speak first so they can start healing too. Someone who had lived their whole life for others once told me, "I started supporting my family so young. Now I work 12 hours a day. Not because I love it, but because I don't know who I am without producing income." Can you see yourself in that? We grew up in a world that taught us our value lies in productivity, achievement, sacrifice. And then one day, you find yourself sitting in a perfectly furnished home, but you no longer feel like yourself in it. A career is not just how we make a living, it's how we live. Maybe you just lost a contract, or walked away from a job you'd committed to for a decade. Or perhaps you're sitting at a crossroads, unsure which path, if any, is right. But trust me, nothing is ever lost forever. Only the outer layers fall away, so the truest part of you can finally come alive. There was once an engineer who lived most of his life through logic. But after being laid off, he returned to his hometown and began teaching guitar for free to underprivileged children. He now lives simply, but every day, he says, he feels truly alive. He once told me, "I don't make more money, but I don't need sleeping pills anymore." Do you see? A new career may not always be glamorous, but if it brings you inner peace, that's real success. Place your hand on your heart, take a deep breath, and whisper in your own way, "I allow myself to choose again." I don't need to force what has already died. I open my heart to a new path, one where my true worth is recognized. If this speaks to you, write it down. I, Sagittarius, am ready to redefine success on my own terms and answer truthfully. Not for anyone to read, but so you can finally see the voice within you, clearly. And if this is what you needed to hear today, press like as a sign to the universe. I've chosen to return to who I truly am, even in my work. Maybe you've been feeling like a stranger in your own family. No one has done anything wrong. But the usual conversations feel shallow. The familiar gatherings now leave you more lonely than ever. You smile, you nod, you listen. But deep down, you know, no one really sees you anymore. You're going through a shift in frequency, and this is affecting your relationships, family, friends, colleagues, and society itself. When you begin to live truthfully, you no longer fit the roles others are used to, and that's when the distance begins. When Jupiter, your ruling planet, makes difficult aspects to your moon or your fourth house of inner life and family, you may feel torn between your emotional needs and who the world expects you to be. Family may no longer feel like home the way it used to. Those you once considered your people may start to feel far away, and you start to ask yourself, do I still belong here? How much of your true self is allowed to exist within your family? When you speak something deep, does anyone truly listen? Is someone holding on to an old version of you, not because they love you, but because they're afraid of your change? If your head is gently nodding right now, you are not alone. Someone once wrote to me, "My husband is not a bad man, but he no longer understands me, and I don't know if I should keep living this way for the rest of my life, just because it's stable." Another wrote, "I love my mother, but she uses worry to control me. Every time I do something different, she sees it as betrayal." Can you see parts of yourself in those words? The truth is, love in a family doesn't always come with freedom, and sometimes your path will require you to step out of the familiar circle so you can return to your deeper self. You don't have to cut anyone off, but you can begin to set new boundaries. You can choose not to keep stretching yourself just to make everyone else comfortable. Remember this: love should never demand that you sacrifice your soul, and you're not obligated to stay in an old role just because your spirit has outgrown it. Beyond your family, your social connections are also going through a cleansing. Maybe you're speaking less, attending fewer gatherings, no longer finding joy in surface-level conversations. That's a clear sign you're no longer connecting out of habit. You're only drawn to connect through truth. Don't feel guilty. You're not becoming distant. You're becoming honest with yourself. Place your hand on your heart. Take a slow, deep breath and say to yourself, I allow myself to change. I allow my relationships to shift with my new frequency. I no longer have to strain to belong. I have always been enough. If you're experiencing distance from family, friends, or colleagues, know this: you are not going through it alone. Leave this in the comments if it resonates. I, Sagittarius, am learning to keep only the connections that nourish my soul. Or answer one of the questions I've shared above. Let's build a healing space, a space where you can be heard, truly. And if you feel this part reflected something you're living through, hit like as a quiet message to the universe. I've chosen to live honestly with my emotions, even if it means some people will leave. Sometimes you thought you had let something go, but then, just hearing a name, your heart sinks. A song, a corner cafe, a random hey out of nowhere, and suddenly a whole chapter inside you comes back to life. And you find yourself standing there, unsure if you're hurting or finally beginning to heal. The universe never brings back a lesson unless there's something left for you to understand. When the past returns, through a person, a feeling, a dream, it's not to trap you in a loop. It's here to ask, are you still who you were back then? Sagittarius, you rarely look back. You're the seeker of futures, the one who chases ideals and uncharted dreams. But there comes a time when Jupiter, Saturn, or Neptune makes contact with the karmic points in your chart. And suddenly, what you thought was long gone returns. How do you know the past is calling? Old emotions resurface without warning. Someone who hurt you contacts you out of nowhere. You keep repeating the same kind of painful connections. You dream of the same people or events again and again. If this is happening to you, you are not weak. You're being summoned to complete a spiritual lesson. Not everything that goes quiet is healed. Some things you've stopped speaking about are still alive, like lines of code left unfinished. And when the time is right, they rise again, not to punish you, but to give you one last chance to understand who you were when it first happened. You once walked away from a toxic connection. You learned to stay silent, to move on, to forgive. But then one day, 3 simple words appear. How are you? And the past comes rushing back. Not because you still love them, but because there's still a scar. And instead of reacting, instead of running, you sit with it. You listen. Not with judgment, not with force, just with presence. You bump into someone who once betrayed you as if the universe orchestrated a test. In a familiar place, in a moment you didn't plan, but deep down you know this is not random. They smile as if nothing ever happened, and you stand there, not angry, not seeking revenge, but also not needing to reconnect. Just a simple knowing, I'm no longer there. And you smile, not at them, but at who you are today. Forgiveness is not about erasing what once was, it's remembering, without carrying the pain every single day. Forgiveness is not about whether they deserve it. It's about knowing you're too tired to keep holding on to something that no longer serves your path ahead. Astrological message: the cycle ends when you rise with new energy. When Jupiter, the ruling planet of Sagittarius, enters cycles of karmic upgrade, the old will return, not to break you, but to ask, have you truly learned the lesson? The past may come back to apologize, or it may return without a word. But you have changed. And that is the true sign that the cycle is complete. Is there something you're still holding inside, something you know it's time to let go of? Is there a truth you've never said to someone else or to yourself? If you saw the person who once hurt you, would you see them as the enemy or as the teacher? You don't need to answer out loud. But if you want to be heard, share your story in the comments. It might just be the light someone else is waiting for in the middle of their own road. You can place your hand over your heart, close your eyes, and read this slowly. I allow myself to complete the old cycles. I don't need to understand everything in order to move forward. I carry no one and nothing that no longer reflects the truth of my soul today. If you feel like these words spoke for you, say it in the comments. I, Sagittarius, am ready to let the past rest and to fully live in the present. And if you truly mean it, tap like as a message to the universe. I've learned, and I choose the light. You are not breaking. You are being reborn. Everything you've just walked through, the inner cracks, the emotional aches, the losses in work and relationships, even the echoes of the past returning, they weren't here to defeat you. They came so you could finally realize you've changed. You're no longer the person you were. You chose to let go. You chose to face it. You stood up, even when everything felt like it was falling apart. Say it again if it feels true. I, Sagittarius, have walked through the death of who I was to live more fully as who I truly am. If this journey touched your heart, leave your affirmation in the comments. And if you feel deep inside that you're no longer the same, hit like as a signal to the universe. I am ready for the next chapter.